कृष्णे अद्भुत कर्मणा प्रबोधितो अपि आसे न बुद्ध्यत्सु च पिता व्यासते ईश्वरान्मे कृष्णेनाद्भुतकर्मणा प्रबोधितोऽपि इतिहासे न बुद्ध्या शुचर्पिता व्यासते ईश्वरानन्दे कृष्णेनाद्भुतकर्मणा प्रबोधितोऽपि इतिहासे न बुद्ध्या शुचर्पिता On Zoom.
व्यासदेवीश्वराः जानाय कृष्णेना भूतकर्मणा प्रोबादितुमितिहासे न बुध्यता शुचार्पितः
व्यासादे ईश्वरे अज्जनाय कृष्णेनाद्भुता कर्मणा प्रबोधितो इतिहासे न बुध्यता सुचार्पितः
Vyasudev Ishvaraha Janehi Krishna Bhuta Karmana Prabodhito Piti Haser Nabudhyata Sucharpitaha
व्यासादेरीश्वर जने कृष्णे भूता कर्मणा प्रबोधितोऽपिति हास्ये नाभूतायता सुचार्पिता.
Go to your translation. Vyasa by great sages headed by Vyasa, Ishvara, the Almighty God, Iha, by the will of, Jane, by the learned, Krishnena, by Krishna himself, Adbhuta Karmana, by one who performs all superhuman work, Prabodhita, being solaced, Api, although, Itihase, by evidences from the history, Na, not, Abhudhyata, satisfied, Shucha Arpita, distressed. Translation. King Yudhishthir, who was much aggrieved, could not be convinced despite instructions by great sages, headed by Vyasa and the Lord Krishna himself, the performer of superhuman feats, and despite all historical evidence. King Yudhishthir, who was much aggrieved, could not be convinced, despite instructions by great sages, headed by Vyasa and the Lord Krishna himself, the performer of superhuman feats, and despite all historical evidence. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The pious king Yudhishthira was mortified because of the mass massacre of human beings in the battle of Kurukshetra, especially on his account. Duryodhana was there on the throne, and he was doing well in his administration. And in one sense, there was no need of fighting. But on the principle of justice, Yudhishthira was to replace him. The whole plague of politics centered around this point, and all the kings and residents of the whole world became involved in the fight between the rival brothers. Lord Krishna was also there on the side of King Yudhishthira. It is said in Mahabharata, Adi Parva 20, that 640 million men were killed in the 18 days of battlefield of Kurukshetra, and some hundreds of thousands were missing. Practically, this was the greatest battle in the world within 5,000 years. This mass killing simply to enthrone Maharaj Yudhishthira was too mortifying, so he tried to be convinced with evidences from the history by great sages like Vyasa and the Lord himself that the fight was just because the cause was just. But Maharaj Yudhishthira would not be satisfied, even though he was instructed by the greatest personalities of the time. Krishna is designated herein as a performer of superhuman actions. But in this particular instance, neither he nor Vyasa could convince King Yudhishthira. Does it mean that he failed to be superhuman actor? No, certainly not. The interpretation is that Lord as Ishvara or Super Soul in the heart of both King Yudhishthira and Vyasa performed still more superhuman actions because the Lord desired it. As Super Soul of King Yudhishthira, he did not allow King to be convinced by the words of Vyasa and others, including himself, because he desired that the king hear instructions from the dying Bhishmadev, who was another great devotee of the Lord. The Lord wanted that at the last stage of his material existence, the great warrior Bhishmadev see him personally and see his beloved grandchildren, King Yudhishthira, etc., now situated on the throne, and thus pass away very peacefully. Bhishmadev was not at all satisfied to fight against the Pandavas, who were his beloved fatherless grandchildren. But the Kshatriyas are also very stern people, and therefore he was obliged to take the side of Duryodhana, because he was maintained at the expense of Duryodhana. Besides this, the Lord also desired that King Yudhishthira be pacified by the words of Bhishmadev, so that the world could see that Bhishmadev excelled all in knowledge, including the Lord himself. Om Jnanati Maranihasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamanyam Dadati Swapadandikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutaha Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajata Sagana Raghunatam Yukantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Savitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sadhana Lalita Shri Vishakhamritamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Harite Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Vishnupadaya Krishnapristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamine Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Karoti Vachalam Vandam Vandam Puram Nityapayam Shri Guru Shri Chaitanya Hare Krishna. So I welcome you all to this morning Srimad Bhagwatam class. Today's verse number 46 of chapter 8 of Srimad Bhagwatam Canto First. So we have recently recited or have gone through the section of the prayers of Mother Kunti. And now here in this section, specifically Krishna is about to do. And in the previous verse, as we see, after accepting the prayers of Srimati Kunti Devi, and he was then stopped by King Yudhishthir, who was also the devotee of the Lord. And on the request of Yudhishthir Maharaj, now Krishna has stopped there. But at the same time, in this particular verse, as we see, King Yudhishthir was not convinced that he should be ruling this world after the battle of Kurukshetra. And then Vyasadeva, because he was considering, why Yudhishthir Maharaj was thinking that, because he was thinking that he was responsible for all this, all the death of like 640 million people, and many were basically, like thousands of them were missing. That's what Prabhupada writes in the purport. And Prabhupada is quoting from Mahabharata Adipar, text number 20. So, being a devotee and being compassionate and soft-hearted, Yudhishthira was thinking it is because of his ambition to become the king, all this thing has happened and he is responsible for that and he would be taking that karma. But here, sages like Vyasadeva and Krishna himself is trying to convince Yudhishthira Maharaj that it is not because of him that all this massacre happened, but it's because the false ambition of Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra. So here we find Yudhishthira Maharaj in something similar situation which Arjuna was before the battle of Kurukshetra, when then Krishna tried to convince Arjuna and then spoke the Bhagavad Gita. Similarly, in the same situation, something similar situation, Yudhishthira Maharaj is also there. And here, Vyasadeva himself, who has compiled all these Vedas and scriptures and Puranas, is present and trying to convince Yudhishthira Maharaj, but is not convinced. So even Krishna tried to convince Yudhishthira Maharaj this time, and even this point of time, even he is not able to do this. So is this something difficult to understand? So in one way, yes. But the other way is, Prabhupada writes further that it is happening for a reason, because Krishna is now about to glorify Vishnudev, one of his another devotee. So here, like we see, if you try to understand anything in this world, there are like 4 different ways to understand it. First is like Pratyaksha Praman. We provide, like if somebody has seen something in person or like have experienced himself, that is called the Pratyaksha Praman. Then comes the Anuman Praman. So you have seen you have heard from different authorities, and you have seen other people experiencing it, and from that you take a guess, or you understand like how it works and what's the principle behind it. So that is called the Anuman Praman. And then there is a Shabda Praman. If you have not seen it personally, or not have seen that happening to somebody else, there is the evidence from the world, coming from authority, coming from scriptures. From that we can understand something else. And there is also a section, there is a fourth part which we normally isn't listed, is also Aithiya. Says that that's the fourth part of that, which is called Aithiya. Aithiya word comes from Itihasa. Itihasa means history. So past some similar situations or situations, and how people reacted to that, or something like a historical case studies of understanding the situation. So here, Krishna, and Vyasadeva himself, they are trying to convince Yudhishthira Maharaj by all these things. Yudhishthira Maharaj had Pratyaksha Praman because he was harassed by his own family members. They were trying to kill him, Bhima, and they tried to destroy Draupadi, they tried to exile them, they tried to kill them. So he himself has suffered, and he had that Pratyaksha Praman of everything which has gone through. And all the way he was justified to actually counteract that and to fight for it, because he is a Kshatriya and he is the king. And it is his duty to protect the Dharma. And he also has seen, Hanuman, he has seen like his relative suffering, and they are going through, and he has in all ways correct to actually establish the Dharma. So he had the Anumana Praman as well, like he has seen the experience of others as well. And in Shabda Praman by Krishna himself, Krishna is quoting in Bhagavad Gita, like various reasons, like as a Kshatriya, the duty of a Kshatriya is to actually fight and to establish the Dharma, and he actually fought for Dharma. And King Yudhishthira himself is Dharmaraj. Dharmaraj himself is always referred as Dharmaraj Yudhishthira. He was never deviated from Dharma. And there are also histories, like there are certain case studies or like some historical references which were provided to Yudhishthira Maharaj by Vyasadeva, which would come subsequently. And there were instances like, I think there was a story of Sudyumna, which was quoted by Vyasadeva to make him understand. There was a story of King Hayagriva that comes. Then Vyasadeva also tries to convince Yudhishthira Maharaj by explaining him how time factor acts on everyone, and actually it is the time factor that is the cause of it. And there was a conversation which is quoted by Vyasadeva, which was a conversation between Janak Maharaj and Ashmaha. So that was like, these are the historical references where we find in it the last sentence, despite all historical evidences. These are the historical evidences which were quoted by Vyasadeva trying to convince Yudhishthira Maharaj. So how is it like Yudhishthira Maharaj was thinking? Like, so for example, in a court, like if there is a judgment to be made, they normally take the reference of previous cases or the similar situation that has happened, and then judge or the lawyer, they normally quote these evidences and would recommend a similar action to the present situation. Something similar to this, that is what Vyasadeva is trying to actually convince Yudhishthira Maharaj. But at the same time, if we see, if there is a murderer or a very big criminal who was actually sentenced as a death sentence, as a capital punishment, so judge has already signed and given the sanction that like this and this person has to be hanged at this time and this date, and it has been already signed. And then later on, there is an executioner who actually executes that person. So, if we see externally, it's like the executioner who actually killed that person. But he was not subjected to law at that point of time. He was not subjected to karma. I mean, at least from the legal point of view, he is not punished because he is acting on behalf of the law. He is not acting on behalf of the judge or the sentence which was given. So he is actually executing it, but it was on the order of the judge, the supreme judge. Similarly, the Shabda Praman, when we say Shabda Praman which is given, Krishna was already saying that to Arjuna that these people which you see in the battlefield, they are already killed. I mean, I have already taken, as a Kala, I have already taken their life. You just have to be the instrument to execute it. So whether you do it or like somebody else does it, like it has already been decided. That is predestined. That is their destiny already decided. You just have to be like so. He said, "Nimitta bhav, nimitta matra bhava sabya sachi." So you just be the instrument and execute it. So similarly, here Yudhishthira Maharaj is trying to Krishna is trying to convince Yudhishthira Maharaj, Vyasudeva is trying to convince Yudhishthira Maharaj by giving all this different brahmanas and etihasas to trying to actually convince Yudhishthira Maharaj. But when we are in certain set of mind, sometimes all the good advices may not be applicable or helpful, or sometimes we perceive that advices in our present situation or our present frame of mind. So there is an instance that comes in Brihad Aranya Upanishad, where a representative of each group, like from Asura group, from Manushya group, from Devta group, they actually approached Lord Brahma and they asked for good advice from Brahmaji, like what should we do to progress spiritually? What should we do to get enlightened? And then Brahmaji just says this single word 3 times. He says the. So the. So it was a common instruction which was given to Asuras, given to Devatas, and given to Manushyas. Like it was a common instruction. But that is something which was interpreted by Devatas was different as to how it was interpreted by Asuras. So when Brahmaji said the, Devatas understood that because they understood it as Dhamma. Dhamma means because Dhamma means sense control. So they understood in a way that because we are so much engaged in sense gratification and enjoying the heavenly pleasures, so that's why Brahmaji is instructing us to practice Dhamma, to control the senses, for spiritual enlightenment. Similarly, for Manushya, because they are Manushas, they are accustomed to accumulate wealth and to get or like to trying to make fortune. So they understood, the Manushya, the representative of Manushya, they understood the as Dana, right? Because we are already accumulating so much wealth and we should perform charity, we should donate it to the right people. So that is what it is understood by the Manushyas. From Danavas or like from the Asuras, they thought because we are so violent, we are doing so much violence on other people. So when Brahmaji says for us it means daya. We should show compassion or we should show mercy to people around us, by which we can progress in spiritual life. So even though the instruction was same, it was taken and it was applicable for different region and set of people in a different way. Similarly, in other situation, it would have been maybe justified, but for a king, it is his duty to perform his duty and to administer the kingdom in a way that the Brahma is protected. And he has to accumulate wealth, he has to take this wealth, not for himself, but for executing his duties. Because without wealth or without the resources, he would not be able to protect or maintain his kingdom. So that is what is given. So the kings, of course, the Rajarishi, Yudhishthira Maharaj was a Rajarishi, and so was his grandson Parikshit. And it is said that like the kings were so pious, they would use this paraphernalias and they accumulate it and would perform sacrifices for the welfare and the protection of the citizens. And they should, or the citizens should earn with integrity, and then when it is time to give back, they should spend with compassion. So that is the principle, that is the Vedic principle, which is always there, like to earn with integrity and spend with compassion. And then this, like, there are like various words that is important in this verse, but another word which comes to my attention is this Krishnena Adbhuta Karmana. Like Krishna is Adbhut Kar because Lord performs superhuman activities. Of course, he's not human, he's already superhuman, and he performs superhuman activities. So why Krishna is called as Adbhuta Karmana? Is this because in Bhagavad Gita chapter 7 it comes like all the energies, all the five elements of this world, and even the mind, intelligence, and false ego, it all comes from Krishna. The Prakriti comes from Krishna, the super soul is Krishna, and soul is also part and parcel of Krishna. So everything which exists in this world comes from Krishna, it goes back to Krishna, and it is maintained by Krishna. So is this because of these feet that Krishna is called Adbhut Karmana, or somebody who performs super activity? But I think it's a cryptic way of saying, because here, like initially Krishna was going and then again he stopped. And he was controlled by his devotee. So that is something, somebody who is like superly independent, who doesn't depend on anyone, but he is always controlled by the love of his devotee. So that is something which is superhuman about Krishna. He would, like, we see various examples in this, like if we consider like in Bhagwatam, Bhagwatam, there is a section of Gopakumara actually reaching when he reached spiritual world. He was greeted by Krishna himself, and he was standing at the door, and Krishna's servant comes, and they said, just wait for a minute because Krishna wants to see you, and then Krishna comes running. And just by seeing Krishna, the Gopakumara faints there. And by seeing Gopakumara, Krishna also faints. And after some time, like Nanda Yashoda Mataji, they comes and try to wake up Krishna. And in the process, the Gopakumara actually wakes up, and he sees Krishna is fainted. So it shows like the love for Krishna, like love for his devotee, Krishna's love for his devotee is much more than devotee's love for Krishna. And of course, like even though like he was awake, Krishna was still like on the lap of Mother Yashoda, fell in ecstasy, and then he was revived, and then Krishna again meets this Gopakumara and greets him and welcomes him personally and asks him to sit in an asana and then worships him. So that is something very wonderful, or that is the quality of Krishna which is like very unique, and that's why he's called Adbhut Karmana. And also, like if you see the past tense of Lord Chaitanya, whenever he was trying to go to Vrindavan, he would ask devotees permission. So it has like twofold principles. One is like, of course, whenever we are approaching or doing something important, it is always recommended that we should take blessings of the devotees. Without the blessings of devotees, nothing is successful. And at the same time, Lord Chaitanya is showing that how he is bound by the love of his devotees. So whenever like Mahaprabhu would say, now it's my time to go to Vrindavan, they would say, oh, Mahaprabhu, you should wait for some time. Now it is like a holy festival, we should celebrate. It's like God Purnima, almost like Mahaprabhu's appearance day. You should wait for some time. And then they would say, okay, after that you can go. And then there would be Ramnavami. He said, oh, you should wait for some time. Then there is Narasimha Chaturthi, you should wait for some time. And then Janmashtami, Radhashtami, Balram Jayanti, Janmashtami, Radhashtami, they would keep Mahaprabhu for that. And before that also, like, they would insist Mahaprabhu to stay, of course, for Rath Yatra, he would stay there. And then there is now Kartik is coming, you just stay here. And then like that, then again there would be a next year. And Mahaprabhu again is still in Puri. And it would go on. So unless and until he would get permission from the devotees, he would not leave for Vrindavan. So that is something very important principles which Mahaprabhu was trying to actually Okay. Similarly, for Vasudeva, that he says, like, I'm sold to Vasudeva because of his compassion, because of his prayers for delivering all the devotees, like all the people, not only devotees, everybody who is suffering in this material world, he was praying for them and trying to uh, deliver them, and he was praying on behalf of them. So he was just saying, Mahaprabhu, this material world is like a pot full of mustard seeds. What's the like, what loss would it be for you? Like, if one mustard seed falls, so if you deliver just like one universe or the people who are in this material world, what is the loss for you? You have the whole spiritual world with you. So similarly, here Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, when he's specifying all his energies and opulences, the same time he's also stating that Tadviti Pranipadena Parikrishna Seva. He's just not saying that it is because I am saying you should follow, you should also try to learn it by somebody who has actually followed and understood this principle. So you have to follow this principle and continuing. So Krishna is not just only establishing the dharma, he's also establishing a legacy of dharma or the parampara, which actually follows after Krishna. Even though Krishna, when he goes away from this world, it should continue, the dharma should continue. And that's the motto of Krishna here. When we say it's not only he personally instructing, but this time he is asking Bhishmadev, or like he's about to take Yudhishthira Maharaj to Bhishmadev to actually give him the instructions, so that it's not just Krishna, or like there should not be like a confusion in future. Like if only when Krishna comes and gives me instruction, then only I will follow it. It's not like that. It is also from the one or the person who is following the instruction of Krishna or who is representing Krishna should also be followed, and he should be served with actually submitting and surrendering to that super soul, that soul. So Bhishmadev, like even though he was very much affectionate, Prabhupada writes in purport, he was very much affectionate to the Pandavas, but he still fought on the other side of the battlefield, and he was fighting for for Duryodhana, because he was maintained by Duryodhana, and because of his vow, of course, to protect the throne of Hastinapur. So we see that even Vishwadev knew that he was fighting on the wrong side, but he has to point to prove that even though Bhishma, a person who had like Ichha Mrityu, like he can decide his own death, or like he can decide day and time for it, even though if that person is there, even Chiranjeevi like Ashwatthama is there, or somebody who's like skillful like Dronacharya, even though the person like this are there, but if they are on the wrong side of dharma, they will be killed or they will be destroyed if they are against Krishna. At the same time, Pandavas, like they have some skills and power, but they were not Chiranjeev. They didn't have Ichha Mrityu. But Krishna was there with them and they were protected. So that is something. So here, even though like in future or like in a way, Bhishmadev actually sacrificed his own reputation for glorification of Krishna, stating that if you're in the wrong side, even though you have Ichamriti, you will be defeated if you're on the wrong side of it. Similarly, here, when the battlefield was there, Krishna sacrificed his reputation for glorifying Bhishmadev, because Krishna took the vow that he would not pick up a weapon in the battlefield, and when Bhishmadev was actually fighting fiercely, so Krishna had to take the weapon, and he had to abandon his vow, and he actually took the wheel and was about to attack Bhishmadev. And that was relished by Bhishmadev, that is called the Viryaras. He was relishing, that is the arrows which were shot by Bhishmadev on Krishna or towards Arjuna. For him it was like a flower offering or like a Pusha Abhishek. So there was a reciprocation of between Lord and his devotee in a Viryaras. So that is something which is like explained in Mahabharata. So in the same way, like Krishna is not only giving the knowledge, he is also establishing the legacy. Similarly, we see Srila Prabhupada today, the disappearance of the first centenary of His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, and we are celebrating that today in the temple 10:30. And of course, there would be devotees who would be and disciples would be giving offerings to Maharaj. But I was just, I just take this privilege and opportunity to glorify Maharaj in some few words. Of course, if you just search on like even on YouTube, His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj glorification, just from last year, like when his disappearance happened, we would find around like 125 videos, and each video consisting of like 5 to 6 hours of glorification. So just see how many lives His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj has actually touched, how many people he has reached to. And this is just the devotees who actually came forward and actually glorified. There would be even more glorification, of course, which is continuously going from last 1 week. I'm just listening yesterday or today also, I think, from our temple, Vijay Bhakti Mataji was making an offering, and also Jai Govind Prabhu is there in Vrindavan, in Delhi, or Vrindavan, I guess, they are in Vrindavan for this function, and they will various devotees, one after another, and each devotee is given just 5 minutes, and they are speaking for like even to that, like the event is going on for like hours together. So just meditating and was just try to like, combine all these things, and I was just remembering the Guru Ashtakam, which the Mangalarti, which we sing in the morning, Sansara Davan. So various verses, how different qualities of the Guru is glorified in those 8 verses. If we see the first verse is like, he's like very merciful, like Pranaya Karunyam Kana Kanatvam, just like a rain cloud which showers the mercy indiscriminately to on everyone. Something similar, like his.
Have you ever had a conversation
something like
completely
that.
wrong?
So you have seen various, like we heard various anecdotes and pastimes of Gopal Krishna Maharaj, how compassionate he was, even though somebody is worthy or not worthy, whether it is important person or very new person, he would go and greet, or if he's there waiting for Maharaj he would always ask his secretary to just go out in front and check if anybody is there still sitting, if somebody is there, or even though it is very late for him, or like if the time is not so suitable, but still at least he would call that devotee, greet them, and just ask like, how are you? Like, is there something which I can help you with? And sometimes it is not possible for him to even extend. So sometimes he would just humbly fold his hand and he said like, is it okay if I meet you tomorrow? And if that is okay with you, maybe you can. And for devotee who just came for the darshan of Maharaj, that is like already a success of his meeting. But just by seeing that humble gesture of Maharaj is also would melt a lot of people's heart, and we have like heard so many instances that have happened. And that's why like he was traveling so extensively and trying to distribute this mercy across and trying to fulfill this instruction which was given by His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada to him, to be in Delhi and to cultivate the political leaders and different members of the government, and also to establish the beautiful temples in Delhi. So he was instructed to actually build 12 temples, and of course, like a faithful disciple of Prabhupada, he extended his service. Even currently it is like almost 17 to 18 temples, big beautiful temples in one city, 70 different bhakti centers, 12 to 15 bases. Like it's like center of the center of the center in one city. So imagine the congregation which is developed there, and the huge, like there are also different sections in Russia, Moscow, Central Asia, and even US, Canada, different places which Maharaj was preaching. So, and the next verse that is come, like it comes as Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nityagita. So he is always like absorbed in chanting the holy names and glorifying Krishna. So if you see, like there are some pastimes. Maharaj was traveling actually from Delhi to Chandigarh. Delhi to Chandigarh by road, he was supposed to travel, and the drive, even if fast, if you like drive from the fast lane, it would take like 6 to 7 hours of the drive. So there was a group of devotees like who were actually going with Maharaj, and they had planned, okay, it's a 6-7 hours long drive. So what we'll do, like we would make a list of questions, and we would ask Maharaj like different questions in the car while traveling. So they just made the list, and they were sitting on the back seat, and Maharaj was sitting in front. And then Maharaj just saw, okay, some devotees are there, and he just humbly asked them, like, can I chant some extra rounds? Like, I have to chant some rounds. Is it okay with you? And they said, okay, Maharaj, of course, you can chant. And then Maharaj started his chanting, and for next 5 to 6 hours, he continuously just chanted. And the devotees were like, they were just sitting with their questions and notes. I mean, of course, Maharaj was not aware, like they came there with a list of questions or something. But he was just absorbed in chanting the holy name, and whenever he would get the opportunity, he would utilize it to the fullest. He was just chanting throughout the 6 hours. Continuously, he was just chanting. And then similarly instances, one devotee was sharing was like when Maharaj was traveling from Jaipur to Delhi. Again, it's like 3 to 4 hours of a drive by the road. And there it was already a night time, and Maharaj was traveling, was in the car. And it was night time, and then he asked his secretary, can you give me Prabhupada's lectures? Like he just brought out, there was a transcript, like a printout of Maharaj's Prabhupada's lecture. And then Maharaj put the light on, and he started reading that. And for next 3 to 4 hours, he was just reading in a moving car. Like sometimes if you just sit down in a moving car, you will feel like you feel a little dizzy. But Maharaj was just absorbed reading in the night with the short torchlight, very dim light, throughout the route. He was just reading and absorbed in Srila Prabhupada's lecture. So this that was his absorption in Kirtan, and not only Nam, but it also glorifying his spiritual master in a way. And the third word is, of course, we all know, is deity worship. Shri Vigraha Radhana Nityanama. So deity worship, Maharaj always be there doing Mangalarti. Wherever he would be there in Parthasarathi temple, he would always be there. If there is an opportunity, he would be there on altar worshipping Gaurnika. And it was a pattern, something which a devotee has actually observed, that whenever Maharaj would be in Parthasarathi temple in Delhi, he would worship Gaurnika. Whenever he would be in Vrindavan, he would worship Krishna Balram, and whenever he would be in Juhu, he would worship Radha Rasbihari. So something similar, like a pattern which was observed, and then they asked, like, why Maharaj actually does that. So the reason was that because in Parthasarathi temple, actually Prabhupada was on the altar of Gaurnika, and he worshipped Gaurnika there. And in Krishna Balram in Vrindavan, Prabhupada worshipped Krishna Balram there, because that time Radha Shyam Sundar was not there, and Prabhupada, we have a famous photo of Prabhupada worshipping Krishna Balram, and in Ras Bihari, Prabhupada worshipped Ras Bihari. So because he was in that much mood to actually be Prabhupada's man, or he would follow whatever Prabhupada would do, he was, even though Delhi Parthasarathi temple is like the main altar is Radha Parthasarathi, and here the Gaurnika is like the side altar, but he would just follow the same. And fourth was Chaturvidashi Bhagavat Prasadam. There are pastimes of Maharaj related to Prasadam. Also, there are like instances, like he would of course eat very eagerly, but sometimes when the devotees would be, like, they would invite Maharaj, they would present him with like Chapan Bhoga, like the big plate, and different feast items were there. And then Maharaj would think, like, how will I able to actually, of course it's the love of devotees that they want to express it to their Guru Maharaj, but at the same time he's not in a position to actually come finish all the feast. So he would like call their secretary or personal servants, and he would sometimes just distribute some prasadam from his plate. He would just take some chapati and some sabji and dal, and he would distribute everything else to the other devotees, or they would take it. And then Maharaj would tell them, like, don't tell this to Mataji who actually prepared it. We should think that, okay, I liked it and I finished it, otherwise they would feel bad. And then they would take as a Mahaprasad, they would take Mahaprasad and would distribute it. And there were also instances like where Maharaj was offered a kheer, and instead of putting sugar, that Mataji actually put the salt in that. And she didn't realize it. And when Maharaj was actually, he took first spoon, first bite of it, and then he said, okay, actually they forgot to put sugar, and instead of sugar, they actually put the salt in here. But still Maharaj accepted that kheer. And then he again told the secretary, okay, don't go and tell this Mataji, otherwise she will feel bad. Like, I served something like this to my spiritual master. And so that was his sensitivity, and there were also instances where he was served without even salt, and then still he accepted it. And the same instance, he said, like, don't tell them. For me, it's okay. I am accepting this as my prashad. So that was his mood, or some pastime prashadam. And then comes like Shri Radhika Madhava, so that verse that comes. So he was again in the normally, like it is say that, or like normally when we hear Maharaj giving, he normally gives a class which is like for the new devotees, so like very generic topics, because the crowd is something like that. So similarly, when everybody is understood, like because Maharaj is giving this kind of or the basic classes most of the time, because it is the crowd which is something like that. So they arrange a special yatra only for like the 16 rounders, initiated devotees, senior devotees, and then they told Maharaj, this is all are like already practicing devotees, all are your disciples and aspiring disciples, so you can give the class accordingly. And then Maharaj gave like there was a camp for 2-3 days, and then Maharaj gave morning. Maharaj chanted for like 3 hours of kirtan in the morning, 3 hours of kirtan in the evening, 2 hours of class in the morning, and 2 hours of the class in the evening. So it's like 5 hours of class in the morning and 5 hours of class in the evening. And the topics or the discussions were so high. Maharaj gave very deep classes, quoting from Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, Bhagwatam, Krishna's commentary, Gopal Chandra, different aspects of Krishna. And devotees were amazed just by hearing like how deep Maharaj actually understand. And just because of our sake, because we don't understand this, and according to the crowd, if the crowd is new, normally Maharaj just speaks the basic topics or the new topics which would be encouraging for those devotees. But if he actually got the crowd which is suitable for his understanding, then he actually gave his heart. And then the next verse is like, of course, there is a confidential pastime. He's always engaged in that. As we see, Maharaj is like one video when Maharaj is sleeping. Even in sleep, he is performing arti. He's doing arti. He's absorbed in the lila or in Krishna consciousness. And not only one paraphernalia, like he's doing properly, step by step, like Dhrupa, then Argya, then Vastra, then Chamar, Pushpas, everything Maharaj was doing. And then Sakshat Haritvena Samasta Shadra, like Guru is to be treated as good as God, not God, but as good as God. So there were like various instances, the famous instance where Gopal Krishna Maharaj was actually, the group of disciples, they thought that like, it would be a good idea to present a very luxurious car to Maharaj because he's Guru, like he travels to different places. So they actually collected some funds and bought a BMW for Maharaj. And next time Maharaj just came to India, the devotee asked that particular devotee who actually arranged for Lakshmi to go and pick Maharaj in the same car. And as soon as Maharaj saw like where the car, he asked, "Where is my car? Where is the car which normally comes?" And he said, like, "Maharaj, this is your car." No, not this car. The other car which I normally go with. He said, "No, Maharaj, this is the new car which devotees out of love, they bought it and want to offer it to you." I said, "No, I will not sit in this car." And then in the airport, like for half an hour, Maharaj was not convinced, and then he went from a different car. And then he asked, like, "Why have you wasted so much money on me?" why you collected this so much funds? You should have used this fund for the temple, or like you would have given to the new construction which is happening. Why we have given this? And then they said, so Maharaj, we have already bought it. What should we do? They said, like, sell this car. Why this? I mean, it's not easy to just sell a BMW like the next day, one day. And he would, whenever he would see that, he would ask, like, did you sell the car? And then after some time, there was this Vyas Puja. And then some days passed. And they thought, like, at least Maharaj just accept this car on the way to Pandal to Vyas Puja. Maharaj said again, no, I will not take this car. And then he would, you should sell this car immediately tomorrow, and only then I will accept something from you. So that was something reminded. Because he was thinking, because I go to people and approach people for sometimes a donation or sometimes, and I'm a sannyasi, it would not look good on me to be traveling in such a luxurious car. And that was his mode of detachment and service to Prabhupada. And then last, Yasya Prasada Bhagavad Prasada, of course. Yasya Prasada Bhagavad Prasada, Yasya Aprasada Nagati Gati, Dhayans tu Vansasya Yasya Sri Sandhya Vande Guroshi Charanara. We, only by the mercy, by following the instructions of His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, who is following in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada, we can actually please him. When spiritual master is present in this world, it is easy. I will not say easy, but if we make some mistake, it's still the spiritual master is there to correct and mitigate that. But when spiritual master is not present physically, his Vani becomes much more important. And in that circumstances, it is a serious responsibility of the disciple to follow the instruction and set a good example for the society. Because if we make any mistake, that would bring bad name to the spiritual master. At the same time, it's not available to actually correct him. So then, as his representative or appointed representative, that is the responsibility of actually executing the order to please him. So, even though I have very limited versions of Maharaj only once in my life, and I'm so not so qualified to have a darshan here also in Vancouver, but as my spiritual uncle or somebody who gives inspiration just by hearing, I take the association of His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. Thank you very much. We are already over.